Welcome to the complete history of Prussia. Aside from the political and military history that stands central to this series, I also want to expand a bit on the personal lives of the reigning electors and monarchs. Make the documentary a little bit more personal and provide a small peek in the lives of the kings beyond their political actions, if you will. The small mini-series, Fathers and Sons, will do just that. Give you an idea of the bond between the fathers and sons of the Hohenzollern dynasty. From the Great Elector onwards, every Hohenzollern ruler left a political testament for his son, a testament that propagated the expansion of power and territory. And, well, it worked. From the Great Elector onwards, every generation of Hohenzollerns managed to expand the Prussian territory. But yet, the relationships between the fathers and sons of the ruling Hohenzollerns was often a troubled one, filled with strife and resentment. This series is less about the art of government and development of Prussia, but actually a very tragic tale of many successive Hohenzollern generations, with each son rejected by their father, only to eventually turn into a father just as horrid as they had had. This episode will cover the relationship between Frederick Wilhelm, the Great Elector, his son Frederick I, the first king in Prussia, and his son Frederick Wilhelm, the Soldier King, spanning a reigning period from 6040 to 7040, 100 years exactly. So, let's see how these three generations of Hohenzollerns got along with each other. In 1640, Frederick Wilhelm, the future Great Elector, ascended to the throne after the death of his father, Georg Wilhelm. The decade previous, conflict had arisen between them. The 30 Years' War was in full swing, and Brandenburg was suffering greatly, upon which Georg Wilhelm decided to send his son, the Crown Prince, off to the Dutch Republic. Once there, the Crown Prince at first refused to return to Brandenburg. There were multiple reasons. One of them was his fear that his father was going to marry him off to an Austrian princess. The second reason was that he actually believed Adam, Count of Schwarzberg, the first minister of his father, was planning to assassinate him. It wasn't until he was 18 years old that he returned, but his father was cold and distant, blocking him from any decisions of government. He himself said about this that his own government would not have been so difficult at the beginning had it not been for his father alienating him from state affairs. Now, you'd think the Great Elector learned from his experiences with his father and would do it completely different. But his relationship with his son, Crown Prince Frederick III, who eventually became the first king in Prussia, was soured nonetheless. One of the main reasons was the fact that the Crown Prince wasn't his first son. The Great Elector's first son died before he turned 2. His second son was Charles Emile, born in 1655. The boy looked just like his father, enjoyed fighting, battle and hunting, and seemed like the ideal heir to the throne. During the Franco-Dutch War of the 1670s, he commanded a regiment, fell ill with dysentery, and died at the age of 19. Now the heir apparent became the 17-year-old Frederick III, and this Frederick stood in stark contrast to his brother. Instead of affinity with the military like his father and brother, he was highly sensitive and partially disabled due to his injury sustained in childhood. When Frederick was 11 years old, his father remarried to Dorothea of Schleswig-Holstein, who became to despise the young man. His stepmother favored the 7 children she bore with his father over Frederick and his brothers. Dorothea influenced the Great Elector to the degree that when he wrote his testament, her offspring gained more territory and lands were partitioned without Frederick being made aware that his rightful inheritance was being stolen from under his nose. In 1681, the Great Elector told an envoy, "My son is good for nothing." Considering Frederick was 24, married and had a child, it seemed that the relationship would not get any better during the last few years of the Great Elector's life. And it wouldn't. A year before the Great Elector's death, Ludwig von Brandenburg, the younger brother of Frederick, passed away at the age of 20. His death led to Frederick becoming convinced that his brother was poisoned and there was a plot to poison him as well, with the aim to get Philip Wilhelm, the eldest son of his father's second marriage, on the throne. Because of his fears, he brought into charlatans that sold him powders and liquids that made him ill, only increasing his paranoia. Not being able to deal with his constant state of stress, he fled to his wife's family in Hanover. His father was livid. When summoned to Berlin, Frederick refused, only increasing his father's anger. In response, the Great Elector stated he would remove Frederick from the succession. Only after the intervention of the Holy Roman Emperor and the King of England did the men reconcile. Only a short while before the Great Elector passed away. And that same year, Frederick's son was born, the Crown Prince, Frederick William I, who would become known as a soldier king during his lifetime. As the platitude for this series will be considering his relationship with his father, he would certainly want to do better. You will hardly be surprised by the quality of the relationship between Frederick and his son. When Frederick ascended to the throne upon his father's death in 1688, he was known as Frederick III, but during his lifetime in 1701 he managed to acquire a royal title, rendering him Frederick I, King in Prussia. If you want to know more about his reign, I recommend you watch the video about him after this one. Now, we can actually confirm that Frederick was certain he did not want to repeat the errors of his father and did everything he could to include his son when it came to education, government affairs, and military matters. He also allowed his son to be somewhat independent in these matters. At the age of 9, the Crown Prince was already managing his own personal estate, familiarizing himself with governmental affairs. At the age of 13, the boy attended meetings of the Privy Council, joining other departments soon after. At 19, his son began reforming the military by standardizing the guns, bayonets, and daggers, even the cartridge pouches. He improved drilling techniques and increased the efficiency of the consistent firepower. All these, at first sight, nearly prodigious characteristics of the young Crown Prince also had a flip side. His mother, Queen Sophie Charlotte, early on in his life already uttered her worries about his tantrums, violence, and rage. He was impossible to control and teach. His tutors were driven near madness, with some accounts saying his personal tutor would have been better off as a galley slave than as his tutor. In his episodes, he would often scream that, "The devil take me if I don't have all of you hanged, or your heads cut off when I grow up," banging his head against the wall if the former did not make an impression. While tormenting all his servants and his mother, the boy was always respectful towards his father. The king, a ceremony-loving patron of the arts, did stand in sharp contrast with his hot-tempered and military-loving son. Now, what's interesting is that in other aspects of his life, the Crown Prince also differed from many. We already touched upon his administrative talent, but for example, during this era, it was common to prefer perfume over washing, yet the Crown Prince ordered his linen to be changed daily and often scrubbed his hands clean. He was a devout Calvinist, completely in line with his future sober court life. He used the Bible to justify many of his actions, even odd things such as the kidnapping of tall men for his personal regiment of tall soldiers. After all, a passage of the first book of Samuel stated, "When Saul saw any strong and valiant man, he took him unto him." The Crown Prince enjoyed his best times during military campaigns, distinguishing himself and the regiment he served for bravery. For example, at the Battle of Malplaquet in 1709, 4 years before he ascended to the throne. Coincidentally, that same year something changed at home in Berlin. Because although by now 21 years old and he respected his father, a conflict between them erupted. Some of the king's ministers were mismanaging Prussia, and admittedly even just the king's court life incurred costs that could not be compensated. The Crown Prince now openly opposed his father and his closest ministers, and eventually they backed down. The king allowed his son to, in practice, become the co-regent of Prussia in order to avoid conflict. The last years of the king's life, he passed away in 1713, Prussian affairs were overseen by them both, with the dominant Crown Prince influencing them considerably. And when the king passed away, his son immediately made it known things such as court life would be completely different with him in full control. Within weeks, he cut the budget of court and tore down any remnants of the high-cultured palace life his father enjoyed. The new elector would become known as Frederick William, the soldier king, known for his sober, militaristic, and I'd say Spartan lifestyle, quite literally the opposite of his father. If you want to know more about him, watch my video about his entire reign in the playlist or on my channel. Now, the soldier king had a troubled relationship with his son as well. Big surprise there. But as a matter of fact, anything we have seen so far is mild in comparison to the structural conflict they had. In the next episode, we will look at the relationship between Frederick Wilhelm, the soldier king, and his son, Frederick II, who would become known as Frederick the Great. Thank you very much for watching this video. Make sure you check out the playlist with the complete history of Prussia on screen right now. I would also like to thank all my patrons for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and want to support my work, consider checking out my Patreon. For just $1 a month, you will already gain access to the exclusive Patreon series. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.